KRFC-Fort Collins. Get ready. Critter Patter is coming up next.
All God's creatures got a place in the choir. Some sing low, some sing higher, some sing out loud on the telephone wire. Some just clap their hands or paws or anything they got. Listen to the bass, the one on the bottom where the bullfrog croaks, and the hippopotamus moans and groans with the big tattoos. The old cow just goes moo. All God's creatures got a place in the choir. Some sing low, some sing higher, some sing out loud on the telephone wire. Some just clap their hands or paws or anything they got. The dogs and the cats, they take up the middle. The honeybee hums and the cricket fiddles, and the pony berets, the donkey neighs, the old grey badger sighs. All God's creatures got a place in the choir. Some sing low, some sing higher, some sing out loud on the telephone wire. Some just clap their hands, paws or anything.
Good evening. Thanks for tuning in to Critter Patter tonight. This is Sue Carrol with Bones du Jour Dog Treat Bakery, and I am here with some special guests. But before I talk to the guests, I want to remind everybody about our open house this coming Saturday, April 8th. We're back in our original space at 619 South College, but it looks much better. We're now part of the Music District. It's great to be back home, and we want to show it off. So please stop by on Saturday, April 8th from 11 to 3 and check out our new digs. We'd love to see you. Tonight on Critter Patter, I have some special guests. They've been with me before, and I just love having them on the air. It is Beth and Wayne from Canine Companion Consulting, and they are going to talk tonight about separation anxiety in our pets. So again, we're talking with Wayne and Beth from Canine Companion Consulting, and we're going to be talking about anxiety in our pets. So what is anxiety exactly?
Well, anxiety is just an emotional response to stress, to fear, to uncertainty. If you think about it from a human perspective, when you're anxious, there's that whole body emotional response of you don't know what's going on, and you get, well, what we call stressed. And that very same thing happens in dogs. It also happens in cats and many other animals, but our expertise is in dogs. And we see dogs that have an anxiety, this sometimes rational, but an irrational stress to their surroundings, to items, articles, events, sounds. But most importantly, there's separation anxiety, which is just the fear of being left alone. And that is something that many dogs have.
So anxiety in and of itself is a normal emotion. It's when it gets out of control. It's what makes us go, oh, we've got a test tomorrow. I better study for it.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's when it interrupts your daily functioning that it becomes a disorder. So
Okay.
all of us as humans and most animal species are going to have some level of anxiety and stress, and that's normal. But when it interrupts your daily life functioning and you can't function, then it becomes a disorder.
Okay, great. And so some of our little dogs and big dogs have, it manifests itself and it becomes a disorder. It's bad enough that
Yes.
they really can't function.
They can't function when their pet parent is not at home, perhaps. So if they're left alone, dogs are very social creatures. And some dogs, when they're left alone, they can't function. They become very anxious and they do things that their pet parents don't like. They
Right.
destroy things. They
Oh.
get out of their kennels. They pant, they whine, they bark perhaps. They eliminate inappropriately. So it manifests itself differently with different dogs.
And are there like different realms of it, or can it be mild and
Absolutely.
up to where they're really you
Just
come
like
home
any
and need a new
behavior-
couch every day?
Just like any behavior or any emotional response, it's on a spectrum. You can have a dog that is completely unaware of their parents leaving. They don't care. They have no separation anxiety whatsoever, ranging all the way up to losing their mind before the parents even leave the house. So they see the leaving cues and they start losing their mind even before the event happens in anticipation of it happening. And it's usually those that we see. The trouble is that there's lots of dogs who are in the middle area that we don't know about, we don't see, because they don't have those overt cues prior to leaving, and maybe they don't have auditory or destructive cues after leaving, and those dogs are just home
Suffering.
really suffering.
Right, suffering. So that brings up a good point, Wayne. So my dog, when I get the leash and my walking shoes or whatever, he gets ramped up. He's going for a walk. So he has anxiety. It's not his anxiety, but it's excitement. But in the same way, if they think you're leaving without them, they can get ramped up.
Exactly.
Thinking, oh no, they're leaving. Now, can they have really bad anxiety, say, if the pet parent leaves the house, but if you leave them in the car while you go in and mail a letter, they're fine?
Yes.
And so different dogs have different areas, or maybe some of them doesn't matter where they're at.
Depends on the dog. Just like people have different levels of anxiety for different things, dogs as well. So one of our dogs, when we first got him, he was attached to Wayne's left ankle, and he would not leave his left ankle. It didn't matter if I was there or not. It didn't matter if another dog was there or not. It was Wayne he was attached to, and it didn't matter what situation, the car, the house. I couldn't even take him on a walk because he wouldn't want to go with me.
Okay.
We bonded,
Yeah.
I guess so.
literally.
At least your ankle and the dog did.
Right. And some dogs do great in the car, as long as the weather's appropriate.
Right.
And some dogs do fine if another dog's home or a family member's home. So it's very situational and individual.
So you have to really see what that individual dog needs. So you can't just say, well, it needs company, so I'm going to go get another dog. Because that
Right.
may or may not help.
Yes, and it could be double the work.
Right, right. And then can they learn it from each other, or do you know? I mean, like they say the fear of lightning and thunder, sometimes one dog has it and then the other dog's like, oh, I'm supposed to be afraid of that. And so they kind of learn it.
Well, we know that dogs can learn from one another. It just depends on
On the dog.
the dog. And I believe that, if you're in a room and people are having an argument, you're going to feel that. You're going to feel
Right.
that stress perhaps. And some dogs, take that on and internalize it more than others.
And there's also the aspect of dogs exhibit social learning. They do learn not just from each other, but from us as humans as well. And oftentimes, if there is a stressor, if there is something that is causing another dog anxiety or their person anxiety, that dog may learn, I don't know what they're afraid of, but obviously I should be afraid too if they are, and they may learn it in that respect.
Okay.
So it can, in that sense, be taught where one dog is losing its mind because it's left home alone, and this other dog at first is thinking, why are you upset?
Mm-hmm.
But that constant exposure to being upset may upset that other
Right.
dog.
Oh, this is the
and-
norm.
And essentially share that anxiety.
Yeah, okay. So what are some of the signs that maybe a dog has separation anxiety? I mean, I'm sure there's some really subtle things as well as, you come home and the couch is destroyed, but
What we recommend is that everybody actually, just video their dog when they're not home. Most people have smartphones, and just prop those phones up, or an iPad, or
or a laptop or
Anything.
anything that takes digital
Just
video.
to see what their dog does when they're not at home. You may be surprised. We've seen some interesting videos. But typically, you want to determine whether it's truly anxiety or is the dog bored. So bored dogs may destroy things and bark. And if you video the dog, you can see the difference because you can see what a dog that's bored does. Their affect and their behaviors are different versus a dog that's anxious. They could be shaking, panting, pacing, whining, eliminate inappropriately. They can destroy things. Those are the typical things that we see. They won't eat anything while their, pet parent is not home.
Mm-hmm.
Those are some of the things that
Excessive
we commonly...
panting.
And sometimes there's things that you may not know. So I think there's a lot of people out there that have dogs with separation anxiety and may not know it because they don't come home and the house is destroyed.
Right.
So it's more subtle. And sometimes you can even see, most of the time you can see the dogs start to get anxious when you do your morning routine and they know you're leaving because they know you pick up your keys, you put on your shoes, you do the same things every day before you go to work.
Right. Well, yeah, like we were talking about with the walk. They very quickly pick up on our cues of what
More
we're
than
gonna
we do.
Yes,
Yeah.
what we're gonna do. So are there some dogs that have anxiety that maybe, like you said, you hinted on that they maybe don't tear up things or they don't destroy things, but are they maybe still suffering when their
Yes.
parents are gone? Like the dog that won't eat or maybe just goes to their corner and lays there the whole time while you're gone?
Yes, we've actually seen videos of people who we worked with that took the time to set up that the video, and they were horrified by what they saw, not knowing that their dog was in this level of distress because it wasn't obvious. There were very few or only subtle cues prior to leaving, but after leaving, the dog shut down. So there wasn't the barking, there wasn't the whining or the destruction or the defecation or anything like that that would be obvious signs, but the dog just stood there staring at the door, whining and panting for hours.
Oh my
And that was
goodness.
a dog that had separation anxiety, but it wasn't so overt to alert the pet parent of its
Because once
presence.
they're home, it's
They
fine.
don't exactly.
Right.
This was a dog that was exhibiting it in such a quiet way that the pet parent wasn't aware until we saw some of these subtle signs and made the suggestion of set up this video, record it, and then we saw what was really happening. So we changed it from addressing the outward behaviors to addressing the separation anxiety, and fortunately that we were able to interrupt that fairly quickly and help that pet parent and that dog.
Oh, great. Yeah, that's amazing that they could be going through all that and you just don't even know.
That's why in all of our classes, or most of our classes, we talk about it and recommend that pet parents video their dogs in their absence just to see what's going on. We had one client whose dog would just sleep on the dining room table. And the dog would never get up there when they were home, but
Right.
the dog had a nice view of seeing when the pet parent was coming home.
Right.
So
And
So
that-
was that like separation anxiety, or was that more of a, well, they're not here like my cat does. She's not looking. I can get on the table.
It was separation
Was
anxiety.
it?
for this
it-
dog, there
For
was
this
more
one.
to it than that.
Oh,
but
okay. Yeah.
The dog would, to see the pet parent leave and then, of course, return home again, the dining room table was the optimum viewing port looking out that window to the driveway, and was up there staring out the window.
Okay. So like the case
all-
you had
exactly.
before, except it wasn't panting and pacing and looking out the window. It just elevated itself so it had
Yes.
a better view.
And again, that was only determined through setting up a video camera to observe what was happening when he left.
Wow, that's amazing. everybody should get their video cameras out, I guess.
We recommend it to everybody.
See
and
what,
we're happy to view anyone's videos.
okay, and see what your dog's doing when you're not home.
Exactly.
So you are listening to KRFC-Fort Collins, and this is Critter Patter with Sue Carrol. I have Beth and Wayne on, and we are talking about separation anxiety. Now, this is a very important subject, and it's so important that they have set up a website, or not a website, a Facebook page for anybody who wants to learn more about it, or maybe if you have questions, you are welcome to view that site. The Facebook page that you would want to go to if you want to learn more about this is...
It's separation anxiety in dogs.
So
Very
that's
simple
pretty
and just
straightforward.
You can put that in the search area and it'll
It's a
pull it
support
up.
group.
It's a support group. We
Okay.
understand that it's stressful for pet parents as well as the dogs because it's hard for people to want to leave their home and go out to dinner. And for the first 6 months that we got the dog that I was talking about earlier, we didn't leave the house.
Yeah.
And it's not easy because you don't have as much of a social life.
Of the freedoms that you thought you would have with a pet. Now, are shelter pets more prone to this, yes or no, or nobody really knows?
They could be, we don't know. We do know that mixed breeds tend to have a higher incidence per one study that we reviewed
Okay.
than
Than purebred dogs do. Okay. I wonder why that is. That's kind of interesting. I'm glad to
yeah, it is
figure out.
interesting.
And you did say that other animals get it as well. I was going to ask if cats could as well get.
Now, cats are usually happy when you leave.
I think mine. Well, mine's not. Mine's pretty happy when I.
We're
he's
just
kind of a
joking.
dog, but
That's a joke.
yeah, some cats are kind of.
Actually, cats can get it, and humans can get it. Children can get it. My background is actually in human behavior, and it is a diagnosis that kids could have. And my understanding, although I don't know much about it, is that other species, horses and goats, can also have it. Although
I would think with horses and goats, especially, well, and dogs too live that way. Any animals that typically live in groups anyway.
Exactly.
Cats
Social
don't really
animals.
Yeah, cats don't really do that normally, except for lions. But yeah, that makes sense. That anybody that lives in a group normally,
yeah.
when left alone, kind of have a problem with that. So, tell me how it starts. Does it start as something minor and then gradually get worse? Or does anybody really know?
There's nothing conclusive about an absolute cause. It's not like, oh, they ate the wrong food one day and now, whoops, they've got separation anxiety. You've got nature and nurture. It could be genetic. It could be a dog just has a natural disposition to being anxious, and that would manifest as a general anxiety and or separation anxiety. Then there's also the nurture part. This dog could have learned to be anxious because of some event or some trauma that caused them to be anxious, and that got the ball rolling. So there's no definitive answer to what causes it or what makes it better or worse. It's all dependent upon that dog. Just like with people, if a person has an anxiety, you can't just write them a recipe for getting better. You have to address all of the different things that fall into what's causing that anxiety and address them as an individual, not as a member of a group.
Okay.
It's very personalized.
I do know that there's a higher prevalence in male dogs than female dogs per one study that I read. It's interesting.
I wonder if there's any, if there are any studies out there about specific breeds of dogs, like I've had a lot of shepherds, and they tend to be worriers. They just are. They just worry about everything. It seems like compared to, like
That
a
could be
golden retriever.
genetics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That just, they're pretty happy-go-lucky most of the time. But like you said, it can be any breed, any dog.
Exactly.
Um,
We don't like to look at things as being breed specific, although there are some traits in certain breeds that have been bred for over time to increase their likelihood. There's no saying that because a breed like a herder
Right.
has been bred to herd is going to herd or have
Right.
any of those traits for that behavior, whereas two pups in the same litter can have completely different personalities. It's more about the individual and their experiences and really just the cards that they were dealt genetically is really what we're looking at.
So what are some of the things we can do to help our pets that might have a little bit of this anxiety that we don't even know that they have it?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's really paying attention to your dog's body language, first of all, and again, that video, and if anyone wants to send us that video, we're happy to review those to see if we think it is separation anxiety. We do know that there's a high incidence of it. 14% to 17%, and I believe that number is probably underestimated just because...
Sure, because if you don't come home and your couch isn't ripped up, you don't have a tendency to go, my dog
Exactly.
has a problem. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you first get a dog to, work on this and have your dog not always be near you, take a little bit of time and maybe go in another room, see how your dog behaves. Is the dog comfortable with that? And just kind of slowly get your dog comfortable with being alone. Even puppies, starting this out at a young age, because when they are puppies, we tend to want to spend a lot of time with them, which totally makes sense, and we
Sure.
want to,
Yeah.
with potty training and all the other things that go along with having a puppy, but also working on that separation piece and not always being with them 100% of the time, because that could just, make it worse
Yeah.
down the road.
So I'm guessing I know the answer to this since we've talked about it a couple times already, but how do you know if your puppy's just being a puppy and chewing stuff up rather than your puppy has separation anxiety? Or is there like a certain stage of life where this comes to the surface? Or can it be in young puppies?
There's fear stages in puppies, and so there are times when puppies could be more fearful, but it's really looking at the body language and the overall context of things. And, is the puppy just chewing to chew because that's what puppies do and that's very normal? Or is it, I'm anxious and I need something to do, and it's just watching that puppy? And I'm trying to think of more specifics, but it's that general fear and just anxiety versus I'm just chewing because
I'm a puppy and
I'm
my
a
teeth are
puppy.
coming in.
Yeah. Puppies are about fun, and
Yeah.
if your puppy's not having fun and seems to not be settled or relaxed, then that could be a sign.
A sign of it. So are these things that happen, like the destruction? Some of the things obviously you can't tell because they're laying on your table and you don't know that until you video them. But things like destruction and all these other things that you do notice when you come home, laundry moved around or whatever, trash cans emptied. Are those, if they have separation anxiety, are those things that they exhibit only when they're separated from that person, or are those things that they might do all of the time, they just do it more when they're separated?
That's actually one of the ways to help determine if it is separation anxiety versus boredom versus they just like to get into things. And that is, does it happen exclusively when that dog is left home alone? That's not decisive, but that's one indicator. Such as getting into the garbage can. Yes, that could be a sign of separation anxiety, but it could also be your leftovers that you just
Were
threw
really,
out
really
were really smelly and fun to get to.
Yeah.
So that's why we recommend getting a video of what your dog is doing. If it is getting into the garbage because of there's something in there that smells great, or the dog just learned, get into the garbage because that's where food typically is. That's an entirely different approach. Separation anxiety that results in destruction is usually a result of that stress, and chewing and eviscerating a pillow can be stress relieving for some dogs, or fun for others.
Mine love doing that,
So it's
but they don't do it
figuring-
when I'm gone.
It's
so.
figuring out what the difference is, and that's where you really have to see the body language and the overall affect of that dog to really know whether or not it is boredom destruction or anxiety destruction.
And now that we've talked about what it is and what it sort of looks like, I want to make sure everybody knows that there is hope and help for those dogs that are experiencing those issues. It's not always an easy fix.
Right.
I shouldn't say easy, not that it's hard, but it sometimes takes a while. It's not something that, like, you train a dog to sit, and once you've done it 3 or 4 times, they pretty much have it down.
Exactly.
You know, it does
It
take
takes
a little time.
Yeah, it's very, very treatable. It's just, it does take time and effort and patience. And it's, you know, we've worked with very severe cases and mild cases and everything in between, and it's so treatable. It's just realizing that your dog has the problem and doing something about it, and just making sure you get someone experienced in this area. And, you know, journaling really helps as well. So you could see that progress, because it may be slow. Like Wayne always says, it could be like watching hair grow, because it is slow at
It's slow,
times.
yeah.
So like I said, our dog, we've had 2 dogs personally with severe separation anxiety, and you know, that's actually how we got into this field, is because our first dog many, many years ago, he destroyed my house and I did not know what it was, and that's actually how I got into dog training.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that. I knew that you had a problem child early on, but I didn't. Well, as dog trainers, most dog trainers, I have to say, most, not all, but most dog trainers don't have perfect dogs, in that they end up taking the hard cases. So
That is true.
I think that happens quite a bit.
It sure does.
I think that does happen.
In our case.
Yeah, I do think that happens quite a bit. Well, I want to thank you two for being on. I always love talking to you guys. I always love learning about things that you have going on. And I want to, once again, if you have questions about your pet having separation anxiety, or you know that it does, and you just need a support group somewhere that can listen to you, and you can get tips from, a great place to go is your Facebook page.
Yes. So the Facebook page is Separation Anxiety in Dogs. And please
that's-
join our group if you're interested in learning more, would like support from others around the country. It's a pretty new group.
Yeah.
So we're it's nice to see that people are gathering and supporting one another with this issue.
It always helps to know you're not the only one.
Exactly,
And it
you're
always
not
helps to get
alone.
the little tips going, oh, well, I'm going to try that and see if this works with my dog. Because I am guessing a lot of it is sort of trial and error. I mean, you guys have ideas that work, but what works with one dog may work better on another dog.
Exactly.
And that's the important thing to understand, is that, like I said before, it's not cookie cutter. You can't just write a recipe for how to
Right.
fix it. It is very individualized. But having a support group, just knowing that there are other people going through this or had gone through this and their dog is now better about it, just knowing that it can be very helpful.
Yeah, I bet. Well, thank you again for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Bet. This is KRFC-Fort Collins, and thanks for joining us. Give your dogs a big hug, love them up, and we'll see you next week on Critter Patter.
Singing in the night time, singing in the day, the little duck quacks and he's on his way. The otter hasn't got much to say, and the porcupine talks to himself. All God's creatures got a place in the choir. Some sing low, some sing higher, some sing out loud on the telephone wire. Some just clap their hands, paws around. It's a simple song of living sung everywhere by the fox, the ox, the grizzly bear, the grumpy alligator and the hawk above, the sly old weasel and the